All right, guys, go ahead and grab a separate sheet of paper for me real quick. So here's our game plan. The 8th grade teachers have talked, and we're going to give you guys the Chapter 9 test later this week. So, Miss Versky, I have my notes at home, though. I have my calculator at home. I have all this stuff at my hands for me to use during the test. Is that okay? Yes. But let's review just for the sake of reviewing. Okay, I'm going to send you the test in chunks just so that it makes sense based on what we've gone over. Okay, so this chapter, go ahead and grab a separate sheet of paper. This is what you're emailing me today. Your worksheet is all on quadratics. Okay, so we've talked about multiple ways we could solve a quadratic. We've talked about graphing. Okay, we have talked about factoring. Only when factorable. Okay, we've talked about taking the square roots when there's no b value. We have talked about completing the square. And we have talked about, this last one was the quadratic formula. Okay, so what we're going to do today is review these four right here. Okay, so the first part of your test is going to be on those four. So let's start with factoring. All right, if I were to give you something like this, x squared minus 6x minus 40 equals 0. Is this factorable? Well, when we're talking factors, we're talking about what we did in chapter 7. What multiplies to 40, okay, but multiplies to negative 40, but adds to that negative 6. Well, negative 10 and 4. So x minus 10, x minus 4, x plus 4 equals 0. We're going to set both of these equal to 0 to solve. So I know x will have to equal 10 or x will have to equal negative 4. There are my two x-intercepts for this quadratic. Okay, the second one I want you guys to try is going to be x squared minus 14x plus 49 equals 0. Go ahead and pause your screens. Try this one on your own. What multiplies to 49 adds to negative 14? Well, we know x minus 7 squared equals 0. All right, so we know x would have to equal 7. So there's one solution for that one. Okay, there are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 more problems on your worksheet on factoring I want you guys to solve tonight for me. And we're going to start talking about the second method, which is solving when there are square roots. So solving from square roots. All right. So you might remember where we had that ax squared plus, it was like bx plus c equals 0. That was our equation, right? With square roots, there is no bx. So it's just something squared plus the c value equals 0 or equals a number. Okay, so that's how you know we cannot have a b if you could solve the square root of it. Okay, so let's try a few out. If I were to give you x squared is equal to 225, all right, I'm going to take the square root both sides. X will have to be equal to plus or minus 15. Okay, let's try another one. What if I gave you 4x plus squared minus 1 equals 48? Again, notice how there's not anything x here. It's x squared. So I'm going to add 1 both sides, like equation. I get 4x squared is equal to 49. I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So I get x squared is equal to 49 over 4. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So it becomes x equals plus or minus 7 over plus or minus 4, because this breaks into the square root of 49 over the square root of 7. Sorry, 4. So this should be 2, not 4. My bad, sorry. Whoa, so plus or minus 2. Let's try one more. Try this one on your own before we move on. Number 3. X squared minus 3 is equal to 95. Go and pause it. Try it on your own. You're going to add 3 both sides. We get 98 x squared. Take that square root to get x equals plus or minus the square root of 98. We want to simplify that. Okay, so in my head, I'm saying, all right, what two numbers will multiply together to give me 98? Well, I know 98 divided by 2, it's an even number, is 49. I get square root of 49, square root of 2. 49 is a perfect square, right? So we have 7 and 7. So I'm going to get plus or minus 7 root 2. Okay, if you need to review on this, go back in your notes to 9.3, I believe we did this, or 9.4, and that was in that section of your notes. That was in 9.4. So now we're going to do another method. Okay, the third method we talked about is that completing the square. And this one is my favorite, completing the square. This is where you're forcing it to be a perfect trinomial. Or a perfect square. Okay, so if I have x squared, here's the first one, x squared minus 18x plus 65 equals 0. We want to force this to be a perfect square. So I'm going to start by subtracting 65 from both sides. We get x squared minus 18x plus whatever that number is, I'm going to force to be a perfect trinomial, equals negative 65. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So remember, we learned in this section that you take half of b and square it. Half of that 18 is 9. 9 squared is 81. So this is going to be x minus 9, because what multiplies to 81 adds to negative 18 is negative 9 and negative 9. So we get x minus 9 squared is equal to, and on this side, we're going to add that 81. So when I combine that, we get 81, let's see, minus 65, which is positive 16. Perfect. Solving for x. I'm going to take the square root on both sides. I'm left with x minus 9 equals plus or minus 4. So now we can solve for x. I add 9 to both sides. So x has to be 9 plus 4 would be 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, or 9 minus 4 would be 5. Okay, let's try another one. If I were to give you x squared plus 16x plus 55 equals 3. All right, I'm going to start by, I'm going to subtract 55 both sides. So we get x squared plus 16x plus blank. Combine that, you're going to get negative 52 plus blank, right? Half of b is 8. 8 squared gives me that 64. We know this is going to have to be x plus 8 squared equals, is that 12? I believe that's 12. Yes. Okay, I'm going to take square root, both sides. We get plus 8 is equal to plus or minus square root 12. Subtract that 8. So we get x equal to negative 8. Now watch what happens. Can 12 be broken down? Yes. Square root 4, square root 3. 4 is a perfect square. We have 2 and 2. There's my buddy pair. So we get negative 8 plus or minus 2 root 3 in simplest form. Okay, Ms. Versky, why is it not negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 12? That's the same thing, right? So we talked about simplifying radicals earlier in this chapter, I believe in section 3. Okay, so we talked about how if you have the fraction 6/8 and your teacher asked you to put that in simplest form, is that in simplest form? No. But 6/8 is also the same if I divide those by 2 as 3/4. These are going to be the same thing, just one answer is in simpler form. Okay. If you need help with that, shoot me an email and I'll send you some material to review simplifying radicals, or we can go over it in our optional class meeting Friday. So there are 2 more for you on that worksheet today as review. And then down at the bottom of your worksheet, quadratic formula. Okay, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Knock your socks off down below on 15, 16, 17, and 18. If you need help, shoot me an email. We have an optional class meeting coming up. Let me know how I can help you. You'll have a test where you can use all this stuff coming up as well, just to see where you're at. and we'll go from there. Okay? Have a great day. Let me know how I can help.